All right, everybody. Here's what we got. We got John Deere 2010, and a hydraulic pump went out on it. So I'm going to give you a down and dirty and actually try to make this video a little bit educational. The problem I ran into is whenever I looked on YouTube, there weren't a whole lot of videos outlining the actual insides of the transmission, the hydraulic pump, or anything else. I bought this tractor. It had some water in the transmission, ended up with a couple other issues. So I need to tear it down and put a new hydraulic pump in with it and replace some bearings and other things. So obviously you can see everything. It's not like I'm not going to have some fun, but I don't know how much of this I'm going to be doing after I really get into it. So everybody, go ahead, do yourself a favor, drink some whiskey. All right, now all right, here we go. I'm looking at the insides of a John Deere 2010. Now, if you look, this is actually the split. The engine is up here, transmission's back here. So this would be in where just back of where the hydraulic pump would be. Okay, so here's what I did right now, and I'll add to this. What you got is this bearing inside here was wore out. The bearing is actually a John Deere JD 7502. I pulled that out and I replaced that, and now of course this gear will go in place for that bearing. I'll put that in here in a second. It'll take two hands to make happen. And of course you're going to have up top for your two different clutches, you'll have this which slides back in. I did not replace this bearing, but I'll show you these two bearings right here. They are encased inside this housing right here. So you can see there's actually two different seals, R394R, and this is a later model, so it has T17882. They go right here and right here respectively. You can replace those, and then you should be ready to put this on. I've replaced these bearings already. If I remember correctly, the top one, which will house the secondary shaft for the clutch, is actually a bearing that's no longer available through John Deere. I found new old stock online by AC Delco, and here is the number that I was able to find it under. So go ahead, take a look at that. If you need to, look it up. Also, in order to install this piece right here, this cover for these gears on the tractor, you're going to need the gasket. The gasket you're looking at is T15563. And you can see that that's going to fit appropriately onto this housing, and we'll seal everything up. Okay, so I reassembled this, and of course it has a big drive gear inside here. And in order to get that to line up with the splines and slide through, I actually fed this piece of webbing down through so I can pull up on the shaft down in the bottom of the transmission so that I could get it centered up and get this to slide in. And then of course these little guide pins assisted in getting it lined up the rest of the way. Last little thing that I haven't done is actually put the snap ring on the shaft here. And I'm going to do that now. Now you can see the support is going to go in place over top of this shaft. Or actually both shafts. You have your internal one and your external one for your PTO and your transmission respectively. Now this is going to slide back in here, but before we do that, of course we got to use the appropriate seal. It's going to go on this mating surface right here and here, and it's T12448. Okay, now I did a couple things here without putting it on video, and some of it was just matching things up. I did put the hydraulic pump on, and I fastened that, and I actually torqued it to about 26 to 30 foot-pounds. That's just based off the diameter of grade 5 bolts. Looking through the manual, I couldn't find an actual torque spec. It just says install. So, unable to do that, I just went by the grade bolt being a grade 5, which is 3 hashes on the end of it. And I tightened all of those to an appropriate torque of 26 to 30 foot-pounds, depending on if it's dry, 30, or lubricated, 26. Now, installing this, what you're going to have to be mindful of is on the back, and here's an old one that I can show you. You have various O-rings. This O-ring here, and you're going to have another one here, and this one here. These two are actually recessed on the case, and you can fit them onto that case. I'm sorry, there's also another O-ring around here that's recessed into the case. And if those fall out of place, that can cause some issues. Now, you may see other people, they actually replace through this inspection cover right here, which is forward of the hydraulic pump mounted right here, and that takes a little bit of work to do, but it can be done. People have done it. Now, the next thing I'm going to move on to is putting in the flow control valve, which is located right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. There's a spring in there. There's also a plunger on the end. This fits back in. Also, and then you have a cover right here that's going to fit directly on top of that. Now, in this cover, there is a washer or a O-ring, whatever you want to call it. And this one I took out is pretty solid. It's kind of starting to feel pretty brittle. So I put a new one on, which you can see right here on the inside of it. And that's going to fit directly on this, and it is going to be secured with a bolt on either side. And I'll do whenever you're tightening this, you don't necessarily need to use a torque wrench, but if you just you don't know your own strength and you're worried you might twist something off, here's about 15 foot-pounds for this size grade 5 bolt holding in this flow control valve on this John Deere 2010. All right, so now that I have all these parts assembled on the front part of the transmission, I need to take care of all the connections going to the aft section of the engine, and that includes the flywheel and clutch plate and pressure plate. So I have those sitting right here on the floor with me. And what happened is last time, and I'll do a slow pan now, the seal inside here was old and brittle, and the bearing was wore, and it started to leak out the end of the shaft, causing a significant amount of oil to drench the clutch plate normally found in here. And this is the one that I took out. So I don't want to use that soap plate, and I cleaned up the surface of this. It's been a while though. So I will go over this once more before I install it, make sure it's completely clean and there's no issues. And I have a replacement clutch to put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and I'll show you that. So here is the flywheel and clutch assembly. Now these cannot be bolted together before it goes on the tractor. The reason for that is you have to fasten it to the crankshaft with these bolts, and there's another set that goes here. There's of course a pilot bearing for the shaft going into the transmission. So I will go ahead and connect that, and then I will install the flywheel. Here on this flywheel it says flywheel side. Make sure it goes that direction, and then of course finally whenever I put it all together on the tractor, this will actually bolt in place there before I slide the front side of the tractor to the back end of the tractor. All right, everybody, as you can see, I got everything back together, bolted up. One side note is I had to actually fasten the pressure plate to the flywheel while after the tractor was put together using the access ports. Other than that, it worked out pretty good. So hey, drink some whiskey, and thank you for your time. I hope this helps.